How do you scale meaningful hands-on learning across a global workforce?
I want people to go home happy. When they leave at the end of the day, I want them to go home and say, I had a great day at work. My manager had a great developmental conversation with me. I feel good. I want to go back tomorrow. So I think it's a very holistic approach to taking care of people.
That's Courtney Johnson Wasylenko, Regional Training and Development Leader at McCormick Company. She joins DaVinci's Angeline Evans and me to explore how McCormick is rethinking training and career development to better support employees, from the first day on the job to long-term growth. Next on Powered by Learning.
Powered by Learning is brought to you by DaVinci Interactive. DaVinci's approach to learning is grounded in 30 years of innovation and expertise. We use proven strategies and leading technology to develop solutions that empower learners to improve quality and boost performance. Learn more at davinci.com.
Joining me today is DaVinci Client Solutions Consultant Angeline Evans and Courtney Johnson Wasylenko, Regional Training and Development Leader at McCormick Company. Thanks for being a guest on Powered by Learning, Courtney.
We are so excited to have you today, Courtney.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with you.
Well, Courtney, McCormick Company is such a household name. We all have a little McCormick in our spice cabinet, and your company's been making food taste good for such a long time. Tell people more about McCormick Company. I'm sure most people don't know the scope of what your company does.
Yeah, so it's a fascinating company. You know us by the spices in your cabinet, of course, with the little red caps. But, beyond that, we are a global flavor company. So we work with many, many organizations. If you're eating something, there's a really good chance that a McCormick product is in it. So, from the seasoning blends through, flavoring with different organizations, we really do flavor everything in our lives.
And not just in the United States, you've got a global presence.
Yes, absolutely. Multiple countries. And different manufacturing and distribution processes. So we truly are a global organization.
And tell us a little bit more about your role at McCormick. What are you involved in?
So I am responsible for learning and development within the Americas supply chain. And my role is really in kind of two halves. I support our site training managers. So I provide the standards for them. I provide direction and support for them to implement training standards within their sites and also for their growth and development as training managers. And then the other half of what I do is a lot of our people programs. So our career development programs, setting the standards for culture and working on, how we drive that to the site level and down to the technician. So it's a very broad role and it's a new role. So I feel very blessed to be able to kind of step into this and define it and make it a role that could really support end-to-end supply chain for the Americas.
That's incredible. So I imagine your site locations are all across the country then.
Yes. Multiple, locations, East Coast, in the Midwest. We have locations in Mexico and Central America, Canada. So we are everywhere.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I'm sure there's differences at each location. I'm always curious when folks are in a role like yours, how do you approach consistency when you're training? Because we always want to be consistent in training. Everyone's getting a similar experience, but you have to tailor it, I guess, to the nuances of each site. How do you tackle that?
Of course, that is absolutely a challenge. And every site has their own culture, something really special that they do, something that's really vibrant about them. And so regionally, we can establish standards for maybe 80%. We can get you very close to a standardized system, whether it's our Train the Trainer program or how we do on-the-job training support. There's a standard template, there's a standard process. But then the sites have to take that and implement it in the way that works best for them. And that will look similar site to site. So if we have someone who transfers sites, they're going to have a very similar experience. It won't be completely foreign to them. But we also recognize that the workforce is different in different areas. They have different challenges in different places. So we allow that little bit of customization within the framework of what is the intent of the standard.
Tell me more about your structured training, like the onboarding training and some of that learning on the job at each site. What sort of modalities do you have, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so we bring everyone in through a standard 5-day onboarding program. And this is their introduction into our culture. So we go through, here's McCormick, here are safety principles, our quality principles, what you need to know to be great on the job, to be safe, to keep quality in mind. And then we move into our ways of working. So by the end of that first week, I think the magic of our orientation program is really that you're building community with a group of people that is starting with you. So they're all at the same place. So you kind of go into it with some friends, which is nice. And then, once you have the standards, when you get onto the floor during week 2, now it's like, I've seen that before. I've heard that before. And they can start to make those connections between like the nebulous, thing that we've talked about and what they actually need to do in real life. So when they move into that next week, they start on the job training. So they're working with a qualified trainer who's going to take them through the job. And then they're going to really work side by side with them. That is very much hands-on on the job, very little classroom time. And they're showing them, here's how we do the job. Here's why we do it. Here's how you fit in. And then here's how you access all of the training resources that you need or that on the job support that you're going to need when the trainer kind of fades away as they become more competent in their role. So, it does look a little different site to site because the equipment's going to be different. The processes are going to be a little different. So for some of our sites, that training period lasts maybe 2 to 3 weeks. And then that employee is pretty good on their end. But for other equipment, you might see a 6-month training plan. So that's where the sites really have to know their teams, know their equipment, and understand the processes so that they can develop that training experience that works best for that employee.
It sounds like you're really following best practices then, just making sure your new hires are retaining everything you're giving them because you're not having too much time between, the concepts into practice, right? So they're
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you also mentioned that you are building career progression programs.
Yes.
What are you seeing as the biggest opportunity when it comes to developing long-term growth pathways in manufacturing roles?
Really, if we go back to why we started it, we had questions about what do I do next? Where do I go from here? I'm a technician and, maybe I know I want to be a crew leader, a team manager, an ops manager. Like that path is clear, I think, when you get into operations.
Yeah.
But then when we look at, I don't want to be a crew leader. I want to develop my technical expertise. I want to be a subject matter expert. And so we saw that, not only did we need to develop paths for people and show them how you can grow and move, but we need to make it really clear and transparent because some of those conversations weren't necessarily happening, not by anyone's fault. Just I think there was, this is the path, that's the path you take. And so as we've developed this program, we really show there is the ladder approach, but there's also the lattice approach. So you can move sideways. And if you want, you can move sideways into a different department and come back into your original department, maybe once you've gained some skills.
Mm-hmm.
And then we incorporated development plans so that employees can look at what do I need to grow today to get to the next level? And what's my 5-year plan? And what roles do I need to move into to kind of reach my ultimate goal?
Mm-hmm.
So as we develop this, it's really been about how do we provide employees with the best experience possible and keep them with us because they're growing and they're satisfied and they see the long-term career. And then how do we give them some real transparency around the conversations? Like these roles are available and maybe our site doesn't have the role you want to move into, but we might be able to find a site that does.
Mm-hmm.
Or we might be able to give you some developmental opportunities that aren't the official role, but we can build your skill set. So being able to provide a system that allows for those conversations and allows for the transparency. And I think that that's the unlock. People need to feel good about I have a career here. I can go places.
Yes.
And it's supported. So I think that that's the culture shift that we're working towards. How do we build the confidence for people to feel good about being with us and want to stay, and also recommend it as a great place to work, because ultimately people who feel good about their work are far more productive. We know that, that's just good business sense, but they're also going to tell people what a great place, we are. And so that's going to build business. So, there's that. And really, I want people to go home happy when they leave at the end of the day. I want them to go home and say, I had a great day at work. My manager had a great developmental conversation with me. I feel good. I want to go back tomorrow. So I think it's a very holistic approach to taking care of people.
I love how the development can shed light for team members on where they may go. Because not everybody knows, well, here's where I am and here's where I want to go next and here's where I want to end up. But it sounds like you're really giving them the flexibility to explore things through your development program.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. We definitely want to see it as a very flexible plan. And I think about sometimes, when we're interviewing and they ask you that question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I have no idea. I am a full grown up and I still don't know. What do I want to do in 5 years? But I feel like we can set a standard that the world is your oyster. Like you can have whatever you want if you're willing to put in the work. There's some definite accountability for that employee, but there's so much out there, and we need to make sure that people have access to those opportunities.
Thank you so much for sharing more information about that. Hearing about different organizations' growth pathways and career progression is one of my favorite topics to hear folks talk about, just because of that human-centered element, everything you just said, and how holistic the approach is, because you want them to make sure they feel good about their job and make sure they can see their future there. And I think that's just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a shift happening from telling people what to do and giving them access to resources in the moment of need. So like learning in the flow of work. How are you thinking about it at McCormick, and when you design learning that really supports employees in the flow of work, which I'm sure is an even higher demand in the nature of who you're training because they're on the floor? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. We really have worked to remove a lot of the classroom training, the traditional instructor-led, whether it's in person or virtual. But we're moving away from that because it's just not realistic to take people off the floor. And it's not sustainable. When you leave that classroom, unless you have an opportunity to apply and practice it immediately, it's not going to stick. So how do we make learning stick? How do we make opportunities where people can apply it? And that's where, on the job training, the hands-on, I'm going to show you what to do. I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to show you, then you're going to do it. And we go through these repetitions. So we build into our training cycle 7 repetitions. So between, telling, showing, doing, that employee for that task has had multiple times that they've gone through it, seen it, heard it, done it. Mm-hmm. And then they don't move on until they're comfortable and competent. And so they might, the next day, we're going to move on to maybe a different equipment center, a different area, but we come back, we come back to that first task that we learned. So we're kind of continually refreshing the skills, and we make sure that when we sign off on training, it's not just, you showed me once, I'll check the box. We build in periods of practice into our training plans. So you have to continually be able to show and demonstrate that you can perform that skill. And then when that trainer who's moved on, when maybe that employee is working somewhere by themselves, we provide that in the moment job support through job aids, videos. We've really tried to integrate more of the bite-sized learning into the processes of training. So I have a task. I need to change labels on a labeler. I can see a video that shows me just that. I'm not looking at end-to-end full line production. I can do it by task and just see the steps that I need. Mm-hmm. So the videos, digitalizing our training content. It wasn't long ago that we, and I'm sure many organizations have had, the binder of training and SOPs just sitting there, on the line. And how frustrating is it? Let me pull this out, dust it off, flip through the pages till I hope I find what I need. And by then it's like, I've wasted so much time. But instead, creating a system where things are very searchable, where everything is kind of very organized. So the document management piece. And I'll be honest, document management, when it comes to like learning and development, it's not the cute part of what we do. It's, it's not fancy.
It's not the spicy part. Yeah.
But it's so critical, because if you can't access materials, then my system isn't really helpful to people. So that whole system of like, how do we kind of design, help people access it, update it, that's all part of our training systems. So I think we do a lot of work on the back end. We do a lot of work, in the shadows to make sure that our employees have what they need and can access it. We're also working on testing out some line bots. So integrating AI to make things even more searchable and more relevant. So we're working on a couple different things and how we can make training relevant, accessible, and meaningful. Really that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
How does it help me in the flow of work?
I'm curious. I'm assuming employees probably can't have their cell phones on the floor, or maybe they can. Are there like computer pods set up where if they need to go check a video before they do something, like, is that the setup?
So we do have computers on the lines, but we also, in many of our sites, have iPads.
Okay.
They actually do have a device. Every employee may not have their own device, but they are accessible so that they are on the lines. And we had to go through, testing to make sure that they are appropriate for the environment. So we can't necessarily do that with an employee's personal cell phone.
Right.
But we do control the equipment to make sure it's appropriate for what they need, but also appropriate from a safety and food safety standpoint.
So I heard you mention AI, and I know, we're seeing it. Obviously, many organizations are using it for productivity, but we're also seeing it shift to more advanced use cases like avatars and simulations. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're seeing your workforce at McCormick use AI for, and how you might see its adoption in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, I think we're still in the stage where we're kind of moving from using it as a really high-powered Google to starting to use it to help us kind of brainstorm and think things through. And do I go to AI and search for things when I probably should be using Google? Absolutely. But then it kind of helps me jumpstart the brainstorming process. So I think for some of our more creative work, using it to brainstorm, using it to help us take our notes from meetings and give us summaries. So an administrative use of it, I think, is pretty strong where we are. Where I think we need to get to is using it to help us develop some training. So, and I have used it a little bit to develop training, and it's fine. And I'll say it's fine. It meets the need, especially when I have a very quick turnaround. So if someone wants something right away, I can really enhance my productivity by using AI.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to be really careful in what we allow AI to do. So, the avatars, are they helpful? Are they meaningful? Is it just a talking head? When we're adding those elements, or really like when AI is adding those elements, we as the human need to go back and really look and edit and say, this is meaningful. This will help learning. This will support. And maybe we remove things, maybe we add things, but it can't just be, hey, AI, create this course for me. And then we just send it off. It must be accompanied with that revision. And I would say the same for, things like the line bot, where we're, working on using AI to help people find material that they need right away. It truly is garbage in, garbage out. If we don't have, back to document management, if we don't have great background processes in place, accurate materials, the right things for AI to pull from, it's going to be inaccurate.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work that goes into the back end, and also teaching people how to use it. How do we craft prompts that get us the results we need? And how do we integrate it into work in a meaningful way? So it's a journey, and it has been a very quick journey. I think about we talked about, a couple years ago, we were talking about AI as this, kind of very
like futuristic thing.
Yeah. All of a sudden it's here and we're using it. And so we very quickly also need to help people understand how to use it safely, intelligently, and really help it work for us. So I think that's the challenge that we face is how do we make sure that what we're getting out of AI is meaningful, it's reviewed, it's something that enhances what we do and not replaces it.
Well said.
Absolutely. We've been hearing more and more people just use the term human in the loop. You really can't just have it do everything. You have to be connected to it. And there's a craft in making sure that you're feeding it the correct information and, like you said, the correct prompts. So hearing you talk today, I mean, clearly people are at the center of what you do and you have a very humanistic approach. How do you shape decisions around training and innovation, keeping your people at the center?
Yeah, so I constantly have to remind myself who's my audience. And at multiple times, I will come back to that because sometimes I'll get going. If I have a stretch of time, I'll just get to work and I'll be producing things. But I have to stop and say, okay, who's my audience? Does this resonate with my audience? And will it matter to them? So I constantly come back to who is at the center of it. And I genuinely love people. I find them fascinating. I find them intriguing. I want to spend time with them. I want to learn about them and get to know more. And I think that kind of naturally helps shape my view of how we create learning. And I think you've got to blend the learning science, the brain science, how we know things work with people and what they want, what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
I would recommend for anyone in any learning field to spend time in the environment of your audience, see their struggles firsthand. And I have the benefit of having a strange career, I guess. I've had kind of two careers. So I started out in retail leadership. And even before that, my degree is in education. And so I had, a crisis in my 20s. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I know that going into the public school system isn't it. So instead, I went into retail and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I get to work with people. I get to teach. I get to train. I get to do all those cool things. And I am kind of at heart an operator. So I loved that. And then I got the opportunity to move into a learning and development role. And I knew I wanted my career to kind of get back to something that was kind of more purely training and development. So I got that opportunity. But my years as an operator have truly helped me to remember what it's like and to be able to put myself in their shoes. When we have people who are up against deadlines from customers, quality issues, safety issues, the calls in the middle of the night to the team managers because something's gone wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying everyone has to go have a career in operations to get it, but put in the effort to understand your audience. When you're going through that analysis piece, know who you're serving. And I'll also say that you have to have the mindset of, I serve that population.
Mm-hmm.
They don't report to me. They don't need me. I am there to serve them. So I think having the concept of who's my audience, what is their world really like, and I'm here to serve them. Like those are the things that keep people at the center and keep it human.
I think too, when your learners know that you get it, that you've walked in their shoes to a degree, that has to make the learning and the training more meaningful for them.
Yes. And I've definitely seen those moments when people find out like the things that I've done that are kind of relevant to what they do. And they're like, oh, okay, she gets it. It's always an interesting shift in the relationship, but it does help to build relationships. That's another piece of it too. I don't want to be just, someone from corporate, sitting at my desk at headquarters. No, like I really, truly want to be seen as someone who has empathy for the experiences of other people. Like I want to empathize. I want to be seen as someone who positions themselves in a place to be support. That's really what it's all about. And relationships are a big piece of that. And trust.
Wise words, Courtney.
I know. I was thinking the same thing.
Oh, thank you.
So many good little sound bites in here, Courtney. I really appreciate the conversation. And Angeline and I know we'll see you at upcoming ATD chapter meetings, and we invite you to come back as a guest on Powered by Learning anytime. We really enjoyed learning more about you and about your company.
I'd love to. Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Courtney.
Thank you.
My thanks to DaVinci's Angeline Evans and our guest, Courtney Johnson Wasylenko of McCormick Company, for joining me today. If you have an idea for a topic or guest, please reach out to us at poweredbylearning@davinci.com. And don't forget to subscribe to Powered by Learning wherever you listen to your podcasts.